Stop everything now. Do not advance, do not scroll, do not distract your mind. Listen carefully, because what you are about to hear is not light, it is not common, and it was not placed before your eyes by chance. At the turn of the year, when the city explodes in noise, when the clock turns and everyone pretends that only the calendar changes, there is a silent war that almost no one considers, the war for the doors of the heart. And spiritual doors do not open with fireworks, they open with choices. You can cross midnight smiling on the outside, and still be closing graces on the inside. If you arrived here now, it is because something needs to be cut before the new year begins carrying the same chains. And I will be direct. There are habits at the turn of the year that seem harmless, even normal, even traditional, but in the invisible they function as locks, and when grace knocks, it finds the house locked. Archangel Miguel warns, and when Miguel warns, it is not to scare, it is to protect. Miguel is not an altar ornament. Scripture shows him with sword raised, facing the dragon. When he passes, chaos retreats. He guards borders, sustains the weak, cuts lies. Sentinel, prince, wall. His name is the question that brings down pride. Who is like God? When this question enters, either God governs or the ego governs. There is no middle ground. Before I show you the 5 habits, make a simple and sincere gesture. Write in the comments, Archangel Miguel, guard my house and my heart at this turn. This is not a request for a like. This is an act of surrender. It's like driving a stake into the ground and saying, not here. Here I do not accept confusion. Here I want heaven. And stay until the end, because the last habit is the most dangerous. It is dangerous because it does not seem like sin. It seems just a detail. But this detail closes graces like someone closing a door slowly, without making noise so no one notices. I need you to understand one thing now. Grace is not a prize for those who pose spiritually. Grace is God's visit for those who open real space. And heaven respects doors. Heaven respects freedom. God does not break into what you locked by choice. Therefore, if you want the new year to be truly new, you will need a courage that few have. The courage to change on the inside before demanding that the world changes on the outside. Archangel Miguel is called Prince of the Celestial Militia. When the name is invoked, the air changes, confusion silences. Where he plants his foot, chaos retreats. And this warning does not come to accuse you, it comes to save you. Do not play with what decides destinies. The turn of the year is an emotional portal. People become more sensitive, more vulnerable, more exposed. And it is precisely for this reason that small habits gain enormous weight. The mouth says, Happy New Year, but the heart, in silence, chooses what it will carry. And what you carry, you repeat. What you repeat, you reinforce. What you reinforce turns into captivity. Perhaps you are thinking, but it's just a turn. It's just a party. No, it's not just that. For many people, the turn is the only moment of the year when the heart is naked. The mask falls, fear appears, hope appears, nostalgia appears, and it is at this point that the invisible works. There is a phrase that heaven repeats for those willing to listen. Grace respects the door. You can ask with tears, you can promise with emotion, you can repeat beautiful words, but if the internal door remains closed, grace waits outside, like someone knocking and waiting. God does not invade. God invites. That is why this warning is not content. It is direction. There are people who will enter the new year carrying an old pain and calling it destiny. There are people who will repeat the same choices and call it bad luck. There are people who will continue in the same cycle and call it trial. And meanwhile, heaven will whisper, it's not destiny, it's habit. And here is the master loop you need to keep. The last habit is the most dangerous. I don't say this to create cheap suspense. I say it because the last one is the habit that many people defend. It is the habit that the person justifies. It is the habit that the person calls my way. And that's where grace closes, when you transform resistance into identity. If you listen to everything and ignore it, you will feel the week pass as it always passes. But if you listen and make a real gesture, You will notice something different, lightness. Because lightness is not born from fireworks, it is born from surrender. So breathe and decide now. I will not cross midnight the same way. I will not pretend that time changes on its own. I will open what needs to be opened. I will close what needs to be closed. So let's get to what matters. 5 habits, one by one. And I will ask you one thing. Do not defend yourself. Do not think of someone who needs to hear this. Listen as if it were for you, because if the message reached you, it is because there is something inside that God wants to free. Habit 1. Starting the year without truth, without examination, without silence. At the table, the toast goes up, but the chest goes down. You smile and quietly flee from yourself. Habit 1. Turning the year without truth, without examination, without silence. The person toasts, laughs, posts, wishes, health and prosperity, but flees from a simple question. What did I repeat? What did I feed? What did I hide? You think truth is remembering mistakes. No, truth is recognizing the path. It is admitting where you strayed. It is stopping giving beautiful names to things that destroy you. Because there is a type of deception that closes graces delicately. Self-deception. The person calls pride strong personality, calls envy sense of justice, calls gossip I just commented, calls addiction just to relax, calls spiritual coldness a phase. And then she enters the year with the house messy inside and asks God to decorate outside. Miguel does not come to decorate. Miguel comes to guard borders. And a border begins with a brutal question. What am I running from? If you do not take a minute for truth, you will spend 12 months trying to fix what a minute of sincerity would solve. And that's what hurts. It's not lack of time. It's lack of courage. Grace does not settle where truth does not enter. And there is no new year with an old soul. Stay with me, because the second habit is where many easily deceive themselves. Habit 2. Promises on the lips. No decision in the heart. You hug, toast, promise, this year I will change. But deep down, you keep the same permissions. Habit 2. Promise on the lips. No cut in the heart. Without true decision, there is no renunciation, only enthusiasm, and enthusiasm evaporates at the first pressure. Miguel does not work with discourse, he works with position, and a divided heart does not sustain grace. There are promises that are just anesthesia. The person promises to relieve guilt, not to change direction. It's as if she says, I already promised, so I am at peace. But heaven is not moved by words. Heaven is moved by decision. Decision has weight. Decision creates a border. Decision closes the door to the old. Empty promise leaves everything open. And that is why, at the first temptation of the year, many return to the same place. Because they did not choose, they merely wished. Desire is wind, choice is root. Miguel does not ask you for a perfect speech. He asks you for a clear position. Because in the invisible, position is language. The third habit is even more silent and therefore more dangerous. Habit 3. Excesses that anesthetize, the party as an escape. The music rises, laughter explodes, and you don't want to feel anything. Habit 3. Excess becomes escape. Noise becomes anesthesia. Because silence would make you hear what you've been avoiding all year. And when the soul does not listen, grace knocks on a closed door. The enemy loves noise, because in noise, consciousness sleeps. And here I need to speak with love, but with firmness. At the turn of the year, many people open breaches without realizing it. Fights, shouts, exaggerations, unrestrained sensuality, drunkenness, words that hurt, jokes that humiliate, comparisons, ostentation, resentment. It's not moralism, it's a door. When you lose control, you give up the steering wheel. And whoever gives up the steering wheel on a sensitive night can wake up the next day with guilt, confusion, and a weight they cannot explain. The anesthetized heart does not discern. And without discernment, the person confuses God's invitation with the will of impulse, confuses peace with laziness, confuses freedom with escape, confuses joy with euphoria. And then, when the euphoria falls, sadness returns as a debt. Grace does not dispute space with anesthesia. It waits, and this is the danger. You can cross the turn without feeling anything and think everything is fine. Sometimes that is exactly where heaven was ignored. But pay attention. The fourth habit disguises itself as a good thing. Habit 4. Exchanging faith for control, rituals in place of surrender. You check color, table, number, superstition, as if guaranteeing destiny. Habit 4. Exchanging faith for control and trying to buy blessing with a formula. You make a gesture and, inside, it's not trust. It's an attempt at command. And this seems spiritual, but it is disguised pride. Don't get me wrong, tradition is not an enemy. The problem is when tradition becomes a throne, when the heart depends on superstitions, colors, numbers, as if God were a mechanism. Do X and receive Y. This is not surrender, this is negotiation, and heaven does not negotiate with the ego. Miguel guards borders, and a border exists to separate what is from God from what is from fear. When you live the turn trying to control everything, you reveal a wound you do not trust, and without trust, grace finds no rest. When you enter the year trying to control heaven, you end up hardening your soul. And a hard soul does not receive, it merely demands. There is a clear sign of control, stored resentment. You ask for peace, but enter the year with hidden anger. You ask for blessing, but enter with judgment alive in your chest. You ask for protection, but feed hatred in silence. Whoever crosses the portal with a closed fist cannot receive anything with open hands. Miguel does not call you to formulas. He calls you to trust, because trust is rest, and rest is space for grace to dwell. And when you exchange faith for control, you start to measure everyone. You become harder. You become less patient, more irritated, more critical. You start to distrust everything. And then, inside, the gate creaks again. It's not lack of a key, it's lack of surrender. Therefore, before going to the mirror, I need to tighten the knot. Midnight does not measure time. It measures the governance of the heart. Heaven observes what you embrace and what you hide. And there is a minute when it becomes clear, either you surrender or you negotiate. Now, I will place you before the mirror. Breathe, and do not flee. Mirror. The interrogation that heaven makes in silence. How do you enter this new year? With faith or with haste? With humility or with demands? With a desire to obey or with a desire to continue the same way, just waiting for different results? You are asking for graces, but what are you offering? You are saying, God, bless me, but are you making space for God to govern? Or do you just want God to confirm your plans? There is a difference between prayer and negotiation. Prayer says, Thy will be done. Negotiation says, Make what I have already decided work out. And many people, without realizing it, live an entire year negotiating with heaven as if God were a service. Then they get frustrated. Then they revolt. Then they grow cold. And they call this, God distanced himself, when in truth it was the heart that never surrendered. I will ask you simple questions, and if any of them hurt, it is because it touched a real point. Do you enter the year willing to forgive those who hurt you? Or do you prefer to carry the wound as justification? Do you enter the year willing to ask for forgiveness? Or have you chosen pride as a companion? Do you enter the year willing to let go of what destroys you? Or will you call normal weakness what keeps you trapped? Do you enter the year willing to pray truthfully? Or will you only remember God when life gets tough? Do you enter the year willing to cut off certain places, certain conversations, certain content? Or do you think you can play with fire and not get burned? Miguel is war, and spiritual war is not won with intentions, it is won with decisions. Perhaps you have already experienced this. You start the year excited, but in a few weeks, everything returns to the same place. The same falls, the same addictions, the same fights, the same sadness, and you don't understand why. I will tell you, because there is a door you never opened. You want blessing in the hallway, but you lock the room. You want light in the living room, but you turn off your conscience in secret. And heaven respects doors. The enemy does not need to bring you down with a great scandal. Sometimes he just needs to convince you of one phrase, I'll see about it later, Later I will change. Later I will confess. Later I will pray. Later I will forgive. Later I will cut this. And this later is a polite chain. It makes no noise, but it traps. Perhaps you are thinking, I don't have a forbidden area. Be careful. Sometimes the forbidden area is not a great visible sin. Sometimes it is a small daily disobedience that you have normalized, a habit of judging, a custom of complaining, a compulsion to compare yourself, a need to be right, a pleasure to hurt with irony, a spiritual laziness that you call tiredness. And there is a question that Miguel asks like a sword. What do you not want God to touch? Because God touches where it hurts. God enters where you locked, and that is where healing happens. Have you noticed that, at the turn of the year, many people make lists of external goals and ignore the most difficult goal? To be different inside. It is easier to change jobs than to change pride. It is easier to move cities than to change habits. It is easier to buy a course than to ask for forgiveness. It is easier to post a phrase of faith than to wake up early to pray. And that is why so many years pass and the heart remains in the same place. If you want a sign of spiritual maturity, here it is. Maturity is when you no longer look for excuses not to obey. Maturity is when you say, I don't understand everything, but I will do what is right. And what is right almost always hurts at first, because it cuts off the old. Now I will tell you something that happens to many people and almost no one talks about. They enter the year with hope, but carry a hidden grief. The grief of what they could have been and were not. They look back and see lost opportunities, destroyed relationships, wasted time, and to avoid feeling they distract themselves. But distraction does not heal, it postpones. And what is postponed returns, always returns, like a shadow. Miguel does not accuse you. Miguel wakes you up. He shows you that you still have time. But time without decision becomes repetition. And here is another mirror. What you tolerate, you feed. What you feed grows. What grows governs you. And what governs you defines your year, much more than any planning. Therefore, when you hear Happy New Year, ask yourself inwardly, who will govern my heart this year? If the answer is not God, graces will knock and retreat, not for lack of love, but for lack of space. Now, with all this, you can already feel the weight of the last habit. Because it is not about celebration, it is about governance. Let me give you a scene so you never forget. Imagine two houses on the same street on New Year's Eve. From the outside, they look the same. Lights, people, music, laughter, photos. But inside, they are completely different. In the first house, there is an internal door called pride. No one talks about it, but it exists. It is that door that says, I don't need to ask for forgiveness. I don't need to change. I know what I'm doing. And when midnight arrives, the person even says a quick prayer, but ends like this. God, bless me, my way. Grace knocks, and finds the doorknob hard, finds the lock of the ego, and grace does not break in. It waits. But the person does not stop to open. She returns to the noise, and the year begins with the same governance, the I. In the second house there is also a party, also people, also noise. But there is a moment when someone goes to a corner, even if only for 10 seconds, and does a simple thing. Bows their head and admits, Lord, I do not want to repeat. And when she admits this, something changes in the invisible. Because humility is key. Humility opens doors that no force can open. Now imagine Archangel Michael as a sentinel at the threshold of these two houses. He invades neither. He compels neither. He merely points. Here is the door. And he asks in silence, who governs here? When God governs, he protects like a wall. When the ego governs, he warns like a sword. When God governs, the house rests inside. When the ego governs, the house becomes a battleground. And do you know what is more serious? Sometimes the person wants Miguel to fight for her, but does not want to let go of what gives strength to the enemy. She wants protection without renunciation, wants deliverance without obedience, wants grace without governance. That is why this video is not for those who just want to feel a chill. It is for those who want to cross the turn with clear borders. It is for those who are tired of starting the year with promises and ending with excuses. It is for those who understand that the new begins when the heart surrenders and not when the calendar changes. And it is here that we reach the last habit. And I repeat, it is the most dangerous because it seems small, but it closes graces like an invisible padlock. Habit 5. A forbidden area for God, denied obedience. The fifth habit is to cross the turn of the year already decided not to obey in something specific. The person continues praying, continues asking, continues saying God first, but keeps one area locked, a forbidden door, an untouchable subject. And God can even touch your life in many things. He can console you, protect you, guide you. But as long as you maintain a forbidden area, you will feel a blockage. Not because God is cruel, but because the heart is divided. And a divided heart becomes a terrain of confusion. This area could be a forgiveness you do not want to release. It could be a relationship that distances you from God, and you insist on calling love. It could be an addiction that you relativize. It could be a lie that you normalized. It could be a hidden habit that extinguishes your conscience. It could be a practice that you know is not good for you, but you do not want to let go. It could be the pride of not seeking help, of not humbling yourself, of not confessing, of not admitting. And then you enter the new year with a stored but. I believe, but I want to change, but I love God, but this but is a half-open door, and a half-open door becomes a passage. Miguel is a guardian. He does not protect a house that you yourself leave open inside. He warns you to close what needs to be closed and open what needs to be opened. Listen, grace does not enter hearts that want to negotiate terms. God is not part of your plan. God is the Lord. And when God is Lord, there are things that fall to the ground, not by oppression, but by freedom. Do you want a blessed year? Then stop playing with faith. Stop collecting promises. Stop feeling good and remaining the same. Grace is not emotion. It is governance. I know this confronts. I know this exposes. But it is mercy. Because a hard truth today avoids an eternity of regret tomorrow. Miguel does not want you to fall. He wants you to win. And here is the detail that makes this habit dangerous. It is silent. No one sees. No one applauds. No one comments. It is an internal pact. The person says, God, bless me, but thinks, this here I will not let go. And heaven hears both. The mouth asks, the heart denies. And when the heart denies, it creates a right for confusion to enter. Not because God gave you over to evil for revenge, but because God respects your freedom. And freedom includes consequence. Do you want Miguel to guard your house? Then do not leave a room open for the enemy, because that is how many fall. Not by what they do in public, but by what they allow in secret. I will give you clear examples because the enemy loves nebulosity. The forbidden area can be a relationship where you always lose peace and still call it destiny, a habit of consuming things that dirty your mind, and then you try to pray with a dirty mind, a practice of lying in small things and calling it strategy, an emotional dependence that becomes idolatry, a grudge that you feed as if it were fuel, a way of earning money that hurts your conscience, a conversation that you maintain because it gives you pleasure but distances you from God. And here comes the final microclimax. Grace is not light to illuminate your hiding place. Grace is light to get you out of it. You may even receive small signs, small consolations, small protections, but as long as there is a forbidden area, you will feel as if heaven is closed. And heaven is saying, open the door, not to humiliate you, to heal you. Now I ask you, with all due respect and all firmness, what is the door? What is the area? What is the I'll see about it later that you use as a crutch? What is the disobedience that you call it's not that serious? Because it's not that serious is the cradle of big falls, and Miguel does not want you to fall, he wants you to win. Now do not finish this video in a hurry. Do not close it and go back to the noise as if nothing had happened. Heaven did not bring you here to accuse you, it brought you to heal you. Remedy, a real surrender and a simple obedience. The remedy is not complicated. Miguel does not ask for instant perfection, he asks for truth and surrender. First, Be silent for a few seconds. No music, no phone, no performance. And say inwardly, with sincerity, Lord, I renounce control. I surrender the governance of this new year to you. Second, choose a concrete obedience. Not 10 goals, not a beautiful list, a real decision. The one you know God has already asked for. If it is forgiveness, forgive. If it is to ask for forgiveness, ask. If it is confession, do not delay. If it is to cut a habit, cut it. If it is to return to prayer, return. If it is to leave an environment, leave. If it is to reorder your house, reorder it. Grace is anchored in acts, and when you take a real step, heaven responds with real strength. Third, for 7 days before anything else, say a simple phrase, today I choose to trust and obey. And if you want to seal it with the sentinel of heaven, add, Archangel Michael, guard my decision. You will notice something. The heart will try to negotiate. It will try to postpone. It will try to justify. Do not converse with this. Decision is not discussed. Decision is kept. And every time you are tempted to return to the old, repeat, who is like God? This question cuts the ego like a sword. It puts God back at the center. It puts you back in your place. And, in the right place, grace finds rest. If you fall, do not dramatize. Get up quickly. Restart quickly. The enemy wants you to think that a fall cancels everything. It does not cancel. What cancels is giving up. What cancels is getting used to it. What cancels is loving the chains. And if you feel fear when making this surrender, remember, fear is not a sign that God has abandoned you. It is a sign that you are leaving an old prison. The old always screams when it loses space. Therefore, when anxiety rises, do not run for distraction. Do the opposite. Breathe. Say the name of Jesus and ask, Miguel, steady my hands. A small decision repeated for days becomes a wall, and a wall keeps grace within. And if you are waiting to feel like it to obey, I need to tell you the truth. Willingness is a consequence, not a beginning. The beginning is decision. You decide and then the will aligns. You obey and then the heart understands. If you want a concrete gesture at the turn, here is one, simple and powerful. At the moment the clock turns, instead of rushing to the toast first take a second of reverence, even if only inwardly. Say, Lord, this year is yours. Just that. That second changes the governance of the heart, and furthermore, choose a holy no. A no to what destroys you. A no to what confuses you. A no to what distances you. Because every yes to God requires a no to what dominates you. Do you want a practical plan? Then do this without complicating. Today, still today, write on a piece of paper, what door do I need to open for God? Below, write the answer without lying. Then write, what step do I take in the next 24 hours? Take the step, even if small, even if simple. Then, for 7 days, repeat the sending phrase and do not negotiate with excuses. And when anxiety comes, when the old habit calls, when guilt tries to paralyze you, use Miguel as a reminder. Who is like God? This phrase is a sword. It cuts fantasy. It cuts self-sabotage. It cuts the idolatry of the ego. I don't know how your year was. I don't know what you carried. But I know what God can do when you open a door. He changes the course. He changes the environment. He changes the mind. He changes history. And I tell you more, many graces that you think do not exist are already near. They are just waiting for your real yes. So if you want to seal it with an act, do 2 things. Comment, Archangel Michael, I open the door. And then perform the concrete obedience that you know you need to do, not tomorrow, today. Because later is the chain you came to break. May this new year be new inside. May heaven find space. May peace find a dwelling. And may you cross the turn, not just with celebration, but with governance. Amen. And I conclude with ascending like a seal for this new cycle. May the Lord guard your heart from disguised pride. May He heal your will from silent resistance. May He give you the courage to obey in secret, because it is in secret that destiny is decided. May Archangel Michael surround your house. May he close the doors of fear and lies. May He protect your sleep, your thoughts, your choices, and may, when the turn arrives, you cross not just with celebration, but with awareness. Because a new year does not begin on the clock. A new year begins when the heart surrenders. And if you made this gesture of surrender, leave in the comments, "I choose to obey, not to show off, but to seal, because heaven honors those who decide." Now go in peace and do not return to the noise as if nothing had happened. A hard truth today avoids an eternity of regret tomorrow, and may you have the courage to live what was awakened.